What if I told you the world's most terrifying serial killers weren't caught by genius plans, but by tiny mistakes? A stolen car, a parking ticket, even a clogged drain, and their dark empires collapsed in an instant. Number 1. Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. It was June 1985 in San Francisco. Charles Ng tries to steal a vice at a lumber store. He runs. His partner, Leonard Lake, is caught pulled over in a car. Lake shows an ID. It's fake. Trace leads to a missing man. Officers know this isn't simple theft. Lake is arrested. He doesn't speak. He swallows cyanide pills and dies. Before dying, he blames Charles Ng. Ng escapes across the border into Canada. In Calgary, shoplifting gets him caught. But he's wanted in California for much worse. Investigators search Lake's remote bunker. They find recorded horrors. Victims, weapons, instruments of torture. Bodies in shallow graves. It's confirmed. Over a dozen murders. Many suspected, only some bodies found. Ng is arrested, extradited. In 1999, he is tried in Orange County. A jury convicts him of 11 counts of first-degree murder. Sentenced to death. His appeals drag on. The moratorium on the death penalty by Governor Gavin Newsom looms over many cases. But Ng's legal fate remains tied to his conviction. On July 28, 2022, the California Supreme Court upholds his conviction and death sentence. All challenges tossed. He has federal appeals still active. As of 2023, Ng remains on death row at the California Medical Facility. No execution has taken place in California since 2006. Number 2. Ted Bundy. In January 1978, a man drifts into Tallahassee, Florida. He is handsome, soft-spoken, and a fugitive. His name is Ted Bundy. For years he has stalked and murdered young women across several states. In Tallahassee, he attacks students inside the Chi Omega sorority house, killing 2 and leaving others brutally injured. Weeks later, he kidnaps and kills a 12-year-old girl, Kimberly Leach. Bundy is careful but restless. He steals a Volkswagen Beetle in Tallahassee and drives north. By February, he is in Pensacola. Late at night, Officer David Lee notices the Beetle weaving down the road. Lee pulls the car over. The plates don't match. When he checks, the car is confirmed stolen. Bundy bolts from the car and tries to run. Lee chases him through the streets, tackles him, and drags him back in handcuffs. Inside the vehicle, police find stolen credit cards, fake IDs, and belongings of several women. Bundy whispers, "I wish you had killed me." At that moment, the officer doesn't yet know he has caught one of the most notorious killers in American history. Trials follow. In July 1979, Bundy is convicted for the Chi Omega murders. In 1980, he is convicted again for the abduction and killing of Kimberly Leach. Both trials end with death sentences. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy dies in Florida's electric chair. Crowds gather outside the prison and cheer as the news breaks. The nightmare is over. Number 3. Harold Shipman. England, 1998. Kathleen Grundy is 81, healthy for her age and still active. Her doctor, Harold Shipman, visits her one morning. Hours later, she is dead. Cause appears natural. But when her family opens her will, they see something strange. Most of her estate is left not to them, but to her doctor. Her daughter, a lawyer, doesn't buy it. She goes to the police. An investigation begins. Grundy's body is exhumed. The test results are chilling. She died from a lethal dose of morphine, injected by Shipman. Police search his home and find his typewriter. It matches the forged will. The quiet family doctor isn't who he seems. Behind the white coat hides one of the most prolific serial killers in history. Patients, many elderly, had died suddenly after visits from him. Records show unusual patterns. He often signed death certificates himself. He sometimes suggested cremation. Each move buried the evidence a little deeper. In January 2000, Shipman is found guilty of murdering 15 patients, including Kathleen Grundy. Investigators believe the true number could be more than 250. He receives a life sentence with no possibility of release. Inside prison, the man called Dr. Death lives only 4 more years. On January 13, 2004, Harold Shipman is found hanged in his cell. Families of victims never receive full answers. But his capture began with one suspicious will and a daughter unwilling to let it slide. Number 4. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. Kansas, 2004. For years, the murders had stopped. But the letters start again. The writer calls himself BTK, bind, torture, kill. It's a name the police know too well. Between 1974 and 1991, 10 victims had died at his hands. Then silence. The killer seemed to vanish into ordinary life. Dennis Rader was living as a family man, a church leader, even a Boy Scout volunteer. But inside, he still wanted recognition. He couldn't resist. He sent police photos, drawings, and a letter proving he had killed Vicky Wegrel back in 1986. Authorities tested DNA from Wegrel's fingernails. It narrowed their suspects, but they still needed more. Rader asked the police a strange question. Could a floppy disk be traced? Detectives said no. He believed them. He mailed in a disk. Investigators opened it and found metadata. A single clue, the name Dennis and the church where he worked. Police put him under surveillance. They collected DNA from his daughter's medical records and compared it to crime scene evidence. It was a match. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader was stopped while driving near his home. He calmly told officers, "I have some stuff that's not very nice." In court, Rader described his crimes in chilling detail, as if reading from a script. He pleaded guilty to 10 murders. The judge sentenced him to 10 consecutive life terms. Today, Dennis Rader lives out his sentence in a Kansas prison, remembered as the man who trapped himself with a floppy disk. Number 5. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. Chicago, 1978. A teenage boy named Robert Pius tells his mother he's going to see a contractor about a job. He never comes home. The man he met was John Wayne Gacy. Outwardly, Gacy was friendly, a businessman, even a clown at children's parties. But behind the mask, he was a predator. Police question him after Pius vanishes. They notice the stench of decay around his house. Suspicion grows. Detectives put him under surveillance, following his every move. Then one night, officers catch Gacy handing marijuana to a gas station attendant. That single felony is enough to bring him in. With Gacy in custody, police search his home. What they uncover shocks the nation. They find a receipt from the drugstore where Pius worked, linking him directly to the missing boy. Digging deeper, they discover human remains beneath the crawl space of his house. One body after another is unearthed. Eventually, 33 victims are tied to him, most of them boys and young men lured with promises of work or favors. Gacy confesses matter of fact, as if his crimes were routine. The trial begins in 1980. His defense claims insanity, but the jury sees through it. He is convicted on all counts. On May 10, 1994, after years of appeals, John Wayne Gacy is executed by lethal injection. Outside the prison, crowds cheer. The man once known for painting smiles on children's faces is forever remembered as one of America's most horrifying killers. Number 6. Ed Gein, the butcher of Plainfield. Plainfield, Wisconsin. November 16, 1957. Bernice Wardens disappears from her hardware store. The last sales slip shows antifreeze sold that morning. The buyer was Ed Gein, a quiet local farmer who kept to himself. Police head to his farmhouse. What they find inside is beyond imagination. In a shed, Bernice Wardens hangs upside down, her body gutted like game. Inside the house, it's worse. Skulls turned into bowls. Chairs covered in human skin. A belt stitched together from nipples. Masks made from faces. The remains of more than 10 women are scattered around the home. Neighbors are stunned. Gein was odd, but no one guessed the horror behind his closed doors. Under questioning, he admits to killing Wardens and another woman, tavern owner Mary Hogan. He also confesses to digging up graves, using corpses to fashion clothing and household items. Doctors declare him mentally unfit. Instead of trial, Gein is sent to a psychiatric hospital. In 1968, he is ruled competent, tried for Warden's murder, and found guilty. He spends the rest of his life in mental institutions. Ed Gein dies in 1984 from cancer. His crimes, though fewer in number than other killers, leave an enormous mark. His grotesque acts inspire characters like Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. His farmhouse is gone, but his name lives on in nightmares. Number 7. Randy Stephen Kraft, the scorecard killer. California, May 14, 1983. A highway patrol officer pulls over a Toyota for drunk driving. Behind the wheel is Randy Stephen Kraft. He looks dazed, his pants unzipped. In the passenger seat lies a young Marine, Terry Lee Gambrell. At first, the officers think he's asleep. Then they see he's dead. A search of the car uncovers more than alcohol. Police find tranquilizers, photographs of unconscious men, and in the trunk, a notebook filled with cryptic entries, a scorecard. Each line seems to mark a victim. Over the next months, detectives link Kraft to murders stretching across California, Oregon, even Michigan. Many victims are young servicemen. They had been drugged, tortured, and strangled. Some showed signs of mutilation. The sheer scale is staggering. Authorities believe he may have killed nearly 70 men over more than a decade. In 1989, after a long trial, Kraft is convicted of 16 murders. The scorecard suggests many more, but without bodies or names, the true count remains uncertain. A jury sentences him to death. Decades later, Kraft still sits on California's death row. He has lived behind bars longer than many of his victims lived at all. His capture began with what seemed like a routine DUI stop, ending the spree of one of America's most prolific serial killers. Number 8. Albert Fish, the Gray Man. New York, 1928. 10-year-old Grace Budd vanishes after a stranger visits her family's home. He introduces himself as Frank Howard, a farmer offering her brother a job. Instead, he convinces the parents to let Grace join him for a party. She never returns. For years, the Budd family lives with unanswered questions. Then, in 1934, a letter arrives at their home. The words are horrifying. The writer describes in detail how he lured Grace away, how he killed her, and what he did with her body. The letter is signed by no name, but the envelope carries a clue, stationery linked to a boarding house. Police trace it back to a resident, Albert Fish. They close in. When confronted, Fish doesn't deny it. He admits to Grace's murder and hints at many more. Investigators learn he has a history of extreme sadism, inflicting pain on himself with needles and nails and targeting children across New York. Fish is put on trial for the murder of Grace Budd. The jury rejects claims of insanity. He is sentenced to die. On January 16, 1936, at Sing Sing Prison, Albert Fish is executed in the electric chair. Before his death, he calls it the supreme thrill. The man once nicknamed the Gray Man, the Boogeyman, the Werewolf of Wisteria, is gone. But the letter that gave him away remains one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in criminal history. Number 9. Andrei Chikatilo, the Butcher of Rostov. Soviet Union, 1990. A police officer spots a man emerging from the woods near a train station. His face is smeared with blood. Leaves cling to his clothes. He carries a bag. The man is Andrei Chikatilo. Inside the forest lies the mutilated body of Svetlana Korostik, his final victim. Chikatilo's story begins years earlier. Born in Ukraine in 1936, he grows up during famine and war. Quiet, awkward, and bullied, he later becomes a teacher and factory worker. In 1978, he commits his first known murder. Over the next 12 years, he preys on children, women, and young men. He lures them from bus stops and train stations into secluded areas. There, he unleashes brutal violence, stabbing, mutilating, sometimes cannibalizing his victims. The crimes terrify the region. Dozens go missing. Bodies are found in forests and fields, often horribly disfigured. For years, police struggle to catch him, hindered by Soviet secrecy and limited forensic tools. At one point, he is even questioned and released. But by November 1990, investigators are closing in. When officers stop him near the station, they record his name. Once Korostik's body is discovered, he is detained. During interrogation, Chikatilo confesses to more than 50 murders. His trial in 1992 shocks the world. In a cage inside the courtroom, he rants, screams, and sometimes sings. The evidence is overwhelming. He is convicted of 52 murders. On February 14, 1994, Andrei Chikatilo is executed by a single gunshot to the head. Number 10. Joel Rifkin, New York's most prolific serial killer. Long Island, June 28, 1993. A pickup truck speeds down the highway with no license plates. Police signal it to stop, but the driver panics. A chase begins, ending when the truck crashes into a utility pole. Officers approach. Inside, the smell is overwhelming. In the back, wrapped in plastic, lies the body of Tiffany Bresciani, a 22-year-old woman. The driver is Joel Rifkin. For years, Rifkin had lived quietly in East Meadow, New York. Awkward, isolated, often bullied, he found his targets among sex workers in New York City. Between 1989 and 1993, he killed at least 17 women. He strangled many, dismembered some, and scattered remains in rivers, dumps, and abandoned lots. Detectives searching his home uncover a grim collection. Personal belongings of victims, bloody tools, maps marked with dump sites. Rifkin begins to talk. Calmly, he describes his crimes, giving details only the killer would know. Investigators realize they are dealing with the deadliest serial killer in New York's history. At trial, Rifkin shows little emotion. He is convicted of multiple murders. In 1994, he receives a sentence of 203 years to life, ensuring he will never leave prison alive. Joel Rifkin remains behind bars in Dannemora, New York. His capture began with something as small as missing license plates, but it exposed a killing spree that haunted the city for years. Number 11. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee Cannibal. Milwaukee, July 22, 1991. A man runs through the streets, terrified, with a handcuff dangling from his wrist. His name is Tracy Edwards. He tells police a stranger tried to kill him. Officers follow him back to an apartment building. Inside, Jeffrey Dahmer greets them calmly. He even offers to unlock the cuffs. But as one officer looks around, something catches his eye. Photographs. Dozens of them. Images of dismembered bodies. The officers push past Dahmer into the bedroom. A foul smell fills the air. They open the refrigerator. Inside is a human head. More remains are found in a freezer, a barrel of acid, and hidden throughout the apartment. Dahmer's crimes stretch back to 1978. He preyed on men and boys, often luring them with promises of money, alcohol, or companionship. He drugged them, strangled them, and performed unspeakable acts with their bodies. 17 lives in total. The arrest shocks the world. In 1992, Dahmer is tried in Milwaukee. His lawyers argue insanity, but the jury rejects it. He is sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms. 2 years later, in 1994, Dahmer is killed by another inmate inside Columbia Correctional Institution. His death closes the chapter on one of America's darkest killers, but the details of his apartment, the photos, the freezer, the remains, continue to haunt anyone who remembers the day he was caught. Number 12. Dennis Nilsen, the kindly killer. London, February 1983. A plumber is called to an apartment building. Tenants complain of clogged drains and foul smells. When the worker opens the pipes, he finds flesh and small bones. Police trace the plumbing back to one unit. It belongs to Dennis Nilsen. Nilsen, a former police officer and civil servant, lived alone. To neighbors, he seemed quiet, even polite. But for years he had been bringing young men back to his flat, many homeless, lonely, or vulnerable. Once inside, he strangled or drowned them. He often kept the bodies for days before cutting them up and disposing of them in bins, bonfires, or down the toilet. When officers search his apartment, they find remains in cupboards, bags, and floorboards. At a second address, more bones and body parts surface. Nilsen doesn't deny it. He calmly confesses, admitting to killing around 15 men between 1978 and 1983. At trial, he is convicted of 6 murders and 2 attempted murders. He receives a life sentence with a recommendation he never be released. Dennis Nilsen spends decades in prison. In 2018, at the age of 72, he dies behind bars. His capture began with clogged drains, but what they revealed was one of Britain's most chilling murder cases. Number 13. Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Santa Cruz, April 1973. A man phones police from Colorado, saying he has killed his mother and her friend. The caller is Edmund Kemper, 6'9", nearly 300 pounds. To officers who know him, Big Ed is a familiar face, chatty, even helpful. They think it's a prank. But Kemper calls again, insisting. His story is true. Days earlier, after years of rage and resentment, he attacked his mother in her sleep. He struck her with a hammer, slit her throat, and decapitated her. He later invited her friend over and killed her too. It was the end of a spree that began more than a year earlier. Between 1972 and 1973, Kemper cruised California highways, picking up female hitchhikers. At first, he let them go, but soon he stopped sparing them. He kidnapped, murdered, and violated his victims, dismembering their bodies afterward. By the time he confessed, 8 young women had died. It wasn't his first time killing. At 15, Kemper murdered his grandparents, then spent 5 years in a psychiatric hospital before being released into his mother's care. Authorities thought he was rehabilitated. In November 1973, Kemper is convicted of 8 murders. He receives a life sentence without parole. Edmund Kemper remains in prison today. Soft-spoken, intelligent, even cooperative with interviews, he is a chilling reminder of how a killer can hide in plain sight, until the truth becomes too heavy for even him to carry. Number 14. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Los Angeles, summer of 1985. The city lives in fear. A shadow slips into homes at night, killing, raping, leaving behind satanic symbols. He is called the Night Stalker. His real name, Richard Ramirez. Police struggle to track him, but clues build. A shoe print from an obvious sneaker links multiple crime scenes. Fingerprints appear in a stolen car. Detectives release his photo to the public. On August 31st, Ramirez steps off a bus in East Los Angeles. He walks into a convenience store. Customers recognize his face instantly. It's on the front page of every newspaper. El Matador, they whisper. The killer. Ramirez bolts from the store. He tries to carjack a vehicle, then another. A crowd gives chase. They catch him, beating him bloody until police arrive. Ramirez is handcuffed, sweat-soaked and defiant, but alive. At trial in 1988, his crimes shock even hardened jurors. 13 murders. 5 attempted murders. 11 sexual assaults. 14 burglaries. When sentenced to death, Ramirez smirks and says, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." He spends the rest of his life on California's death row. In 2013, before his execution could be carried out, Richard Ramirez dies of liver failure. The man who terrorized Los Angeles for a year is gone, but the terror he spread lingers in memory. Number 15. David Berkowitz, son of Sam. New York City, 1977. Young couples sit in parked cars, unaware a gunman is watching. He fires a .44 caliber revolver through the windows, killing and wounding. For over a year, the city is paralyzed by fear. Women cut their hair, dye it blonde, anything to avoid the target he seems to favor, young brunettes. The newspapers call him the son of Sam. Detectives chase every lead. Then, on July 31st, 1977, a final attack leaves Stacy Moskowitz dead and her boyfriend badly injured. An eyewitness comes forward. She remembers seeing a strange man moments before the shooting, and she also recalls something else. A cream-colored car parked illegally near a fire hydrant, receiving a ticket. Police track the ticket. It belongs to a man in Yonkers, David Berkowitz. When officers search his car, they find maps of the crime scenes, weapons, and the .44 revolver. On August 10th, they wait outside his apartment. As Berkowitz approaches, one detective asks, "Now that I've got you, who have I got?" Berkowitz smiles. "You know," he replies. At trial, he pleads guilty to 6 murders and is sentenced to life in prison. Later, he claims he killed under orders from a demon speaking through a neighbor's dog, but the courts reject any insanity defense. Decades later, David Berkowitz remains behind bars, serving 6 life sentences. His reign of terror ended not through a massive sting operation, but a single parking ticket that placed him at the scene of his crimes.